the opportunity to get in touch with so many of the kids and parents so that I can share a bit of awareness about the current scenario. So, the basic talk for today is about coexisting with COVID-19 in the context of school reopening. So, the last 20 months, we've seen how COVID-19 has posed a great medical threat to us. Not only that, it has actually disrupted our normal lives as well. Now things are getting better, people are getting vaccinated. So things are getting better, people are getting vaccinated, and that is why we need to take a balanced and planned strategy, a planned way of moving towards life so that we are able to live with the virus. That is, we need to coexist with COVID-19. So that is what I'm going to talk about today. Right, so the basis for my today's talk is from various guidelines which have been put forth by various organizations regarding opening of schools. So I have collected data from all these guidelines, basically from the UNICEF, the CDC, which is Centers for Disease Control, US, you have from Mayo Clinic, from AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, and our very own Indian Academy of Pediatrics. So we have put together all these guidelines. Most of them have the same basis, the same facts. So I just collected all of them together so that we get a basic idea as to how to go about going to school safely. So first, let me introduce you to coronavirus. I think everybody knows COVID stands for coronavirus disease 19. It is caused by SARS-CoV-2. That's the name of the virus, and the basic mode of spread is via respiratory droplets. So the transmission is airborne. When a person who is infected coughs, sneezes, or even speaks, then this respiratory droplets which contain the virus is thrown into the air, which is then taken up by a person who is standing in front. So he may just inhale this particle and get infected. The chances of infection definitely will be high when this person is in close contact with the infected person, that is within 6 feet. There is another way of transmission is when you have your hands, getting contaminated by touching contaminated surfaces, and then you use the contaminated, hand, and you put it on your face, the nose or mouth, and the virus enters in from there. So these are the two main modes of transmission. Though it is known that if an area is poorly ventilated, then this airborne particles can stay suspended in the air for a longer time and can even go for a longer distance. So that is the importance of maintaining ventilation. So children and COVID, this is what everybody wants to know. So COVID-19 affects all age groups, including newborns. So we have cases of newborns coming with COVID positive reports. Children account for almost 8.5 to 10% of total infections. Of late, the percentage is almost 15 to 17%. Depends upon the area which is being taken into consideration and the testing scenarios. The infection is usually mild. The very low rates of hospitalization and low fatality in kids. Now, why is it so? Nobody knows the exact reason, but it is believed that children already have immunity to coronaviruses because they usually suffer from cold and upper respiratory tract infections. Did you know that coronavirus is the same virus which is to cause frequent colds in children? This is a more severe form of the coronavirus which has caused COVID infection. Children also have less ACE receptors. Now, these are receptors to which the coronavirus binds and causes infection. Now, children don't have these receptors. That is why they don't have a very severe infection. Also, another feature is children can't mount a very strong immune response. Now, in adults, the strong immune response is responsible for the severe form of COVID infection. The last point being children have less comorbidities, that is, diabetes, hypertension, lung disease, heart disease is more common in adults rather than kids. So that is why children again have low chances of, or a very low or mild infection. So these are the reasons why infection is usually mild. This is mentioned in various guidelines and various documents, various studies, and we've seen it also personally, that children usually have a very mild infection. The incubation period is 2 to 14 days. That is the period from which you come in contact with a positive case, and then you develop the disease. So it's almost 2 to 14 days. Average is around 6 days after exposure. So this is the same for adults as well. Symptoms. asymptomatic infection in almost 20 to 50% of the cases. You will not even know that the child is having COVID positive report unless you do the test. These children are usually detected when somebody else in their house is positive, and then you do family screening and the child turns out to be positive. Mild symptoms like fever, body pain, cold, sore throat, a little bit of mild cough is well known, and it is seen in almost more than 95 to 96% of the cases, and it recovers in 3 to 5 days with symptomatic treatment. Last wave, in the second wave, we had children who came with GI symptoms, gastrointestinal symptoms like pain in abdomen, loose motions, and vomiting. Older children also complain of loss of smell and taste. So various studies show an incidence of around 10%. Younger children are unable to detect it. Testing is the same. So we use RT-PCR, a nasal swab or a throat swab is used to do the testing, same like in adults. And we have the rapid antigen test. It's another good option which can be done at home. So we have patients who actually test themselves at home nowadays. The test, if it's positive, it's confirmed. If it is negative, you need to recheck with the help of a RT-PCR. An important point which I wanted to mention here, that CT scan is not a routine test for COVID. You don't recommend it in children. You need to do it only when needed. So we often see cases where they do CT and they come to say that they have COVID. So that is not recommended in children at all. So just a brief, after a brief understanding about what is a coronavirus and a COVID infection, let's see how it has affected children. So I told you around 8 to 10%, 11% of the total infections globally as well as in India are children. In addition to this, COVID infection has also resulted in school closures. So almost 90% of the students around the world have suffered due to school closures. In India, almost 1.5 million schools have been closed, and this has affected around 247 million children in schools and 28 million children in Anganwadis and preschools. So a lot of things related to school closures, and you know what are the effects of school closures? It is not only academic, but also it has effects over the psychology of the child, the physical well-being, and socioeconomic factors. So let's see one by one. Academic effect is seen right from loss of learning. So actually many kids did not have access to internet. There were problems related to electronic resources, laptops. You have multiple kids at home, you have a single laptop. So a lot of such issues created difficulties to continue education as what it would have been before. Many children, especially those with learning disabilities, were found to struggle with schoolworks. And even good students actually could, following online classes were a bit difficult. So children were really upset. And some children actually need parents' support for online classes. So when working parents are there or parents are not, educational enough to support a child, there were a lot of issues related to education. So this was only one part of it. But on the other side, we found that a lot of children had behavior issues. So the younger ones were actually very frustrated and angry and throwing tantrums. The older ones faced a lot of stress, anxiety because of the syllabus. And so all this was known because they were not mingling with others. They had no social contacts. They were not in touch with their friends. And they were all lonely and sad. And another important feature which we found was a lot of screen addictions. In addition to online classes, children were also using TV and mobile and tabs rampantly. And most of them came with a lot of eye issues. So, refractive errors had increased. They also had back pain, neck pains. So a lot of such issues which were seen over the last 20 months. Physical effects like poor nutrition. Poor nutrition, basically, I wanted to talk about is excess nutrition. That is because they were taking a lot of junk food, eating in between the meals. So the discipline which was there when the child was going to school is lost. They were more inactive. They were at home, not going out, no exercise, a lot of sleep disturbances. Children had put up a lot of weight. So obesity was a big issue. And we had also seen cases of vaccine disruption. So many of them skipped their doses of vaccine, which they were supposed to take. And because of that, you could have vaccine-related illness, vaccine-preventable illnesses, which were also high. Then there are outbreaks which are reported all over the world because of this. So this was the physical impact of school closure. So, and the socioeconomic impact. So we had a lot of working parents who were struggling. So, to take care of children. Children lost out on school meal programs. So there are quite a number of kids in our country who depend on the school meal program for their daily meals. So they had lost the nutritive effect of it. And because of the economic factors, there are a lot of school dropouts, child labor, child marriage. So there is plenty of issues associated with school closure. So schools were not only associated with academic problems, academic improvement, it was also associated with so many other factors which are really important for a child. So this is what happened because of school closure, and the real effect will come in the days to come. So we will get to know in the future. The role of schools is beyond academics. Schools are safe, stimulating, and enriching places to be while parents or guardians are working. Children and adolescents receive more than just academics. So they learn social and emotional skills. They get a lot of physical activity. They have access to mental health, other support services. For many families, schools are where children get their healthy meals. So through this mid-school midday meals program, they also have access to internet, libraries, and other vital services. So I think nobody can question the role of schools in a child's life. It's a fundamental right of every child to go to school. On the other hand, you need to understand that the benefits of opening schools with all due precautions, so all COVID appropriate behaviors, definitely outweighs the risk due to COVID. So that is why I wanted to highlight in the beginning itself that children are at an extremely low risk of getting severe COVID infections. Now, this is evidence, this is solid proof, and you have a lot of studies which actually go in favor of this. Also, there are quite a number of studies which have come from abroad which show that schools do not significantly contribute to COVID-19 spread in the community, provided COVID-appropriate behaviors are taken care of. So that is very important. In school, transmission of virus is quite low. So people actually are trying to find out what is the transmission rate of infection between children. So it is supposed to be low because they are not very symptomatic. So probably they do not throw out a lot of virus. So that is the reason which is being suspected. But uh, but the final line is that schools do not increase the COVID-19 spread in the community. There are studies where you have small outbreaks in school. It is inevitable because COVID is not gone completely from the community. It is still around. So you may have outbreaks, and most of these outbreaks are associated with absence of COVID appropriate behaviors. So they have either not used a mask. So it has been tracked, and when the tracking is done, it's usually community spread rather than spread in school. So the underlying point is that lockdown cannot continue forever. Schools have to reopen, and this is the new normal. So we all have to get adapted to it. So in order to get adapted to it, we should be aware. We should create awareness among ourselves and amongst others. So awareness regarding returning to school, because returning to school is now, it has taken a new meaning and a new set of worries for parents and other caregivers, and that is why we are all here today to discuss about it. Schools must now balance the educational, social, emotional needs of students on one hand, and the health and safety of students and staff on the other. So schools have an additional responsibility now, and all this is possible by using multiple preventive strategies. Now, what are these multiple preventive strategies? These are multiple ways in which you can keep children, teachers, and staff of schools safe and ensure that schools are open. So these are various ways. I've listed 8 ways. These are from CDC guidelines. And these 8 ways individually themselves reduce the risk of transmission. And when you put them all together, the risk actually reduces a lot. So it doesn't get eliminated. I'm not telling that risk will not be there, but it reduces to a very great extent. So let's go one by one. So the first step in your prevention strategy is to get vaccinated. So if you look at the recommendations, getting vaccinated is the first and the best way to prevent serious COVID-19 infection. All COVID vaccines which are available in our country are extremely safe and effective. Widespread vaccination is the only way to stop the pandemic. Now, it is important to understand that vaccines protect against severe form of the disease. You can still get infected and you can still transfer the infection to others if you do not practice COVID appropriate behaviors. So in spite of getting vaccinated, you need to continue to practice SMS. That is, you need to continue to maintain social distancing, use masks, and do proper sanitization, so hand washing, to prevent getting infected and spreading it to others. So all individuals who are eligible in our country, eligibility is any person who is more than 18 years of age should receive vaccine. At present, vaccines for children are in the initial stages. So there are some vaccines which have been actually approved for emergency use in our country for children more than 12 years. But it has the data, we have not got any instructions from the government regarding use of the same. So whenever we get the necessary nod from the government, we will definitely go ahead for vaccination of children as well. So for parents, we need to encourage all eligible members in the family, especially the grandparents, people who have chronic diseases like heart disease, lung disease, diabetes, high blood pressure. Everybody in the family who is eligible for vaccination should get vaccinated. This is the first step before you send the child to school. Schools can encourage your teachers, staff, and families to get vaccinated. So that is very important, especially teachers who have some hypertension or diabetes, any risk factor. Ensure that the teachers have taken 2 doses of vaccine and at least 15 days have gone past the second dose of vaccine. So then only the teachers should, those who have risk factors should start coming to school. Post information sessions to connect to parents and guardians and give them information about the benefits of vaccination and answer all the frequently asked questions so that parents get convinced. And that is the way I think getting vaccinated actually helps in stopping the pandemic. So the first step is done. The second step is to practice safe distancing. Now, if you go through the recommendations, social distancing is nothing but allowing enough space between two people to reduce the spread of disease. So if you go at look at the recommendations, initial recommendations from CDC maintain that you need to maintain physical distance of at least 6 feet. So they used to tell 2 meters or 6 feet between two people. But now for school opening, the guidelines have actually reduced it to 3 feet. That is 1 meter. So it has been mentioned that schools need to maintain a distance of 3 feet or 1 meter between students within classrooms, including the spacing of the desks. And this has to be combined with compulsory indoor mask wearing. Now, why is this change in the guideline? This is because because of evidence that children transmit the virus less as compared to adults. So that is one reason why they have brought down the value. And secondly, maintaining a distance of 2 meters in classrooms is quite difficult. It's not very practicable. So what they have done is you maintain a distance of at least 1 meter or 3 feet, and you combine it with use of mask. And the third recommendation is to do cohorting. Cohorting is where you collect a group of children, and the children are made to stick to that group. So these are specially used for younger kids. The two groups don't come in contact with each other. So this small group is going to come at a particular time to school and leave the school at a particular time. They will stay among themselves. So this will limit the the staff, the teachers, and the students who are exposed in this group, and you don't allow mixing of the group. So this is one of the techniques which has been proposed by the guidelines to ensure that you maintain distancing. So what can schools do is definitely start with cohorting. You can have smaller classes. You can break down your classes into groups. You can have alternate attending schedules. I think most of the schools are following the same. As much as possible, prefer outdoor spaces so that there is a lot of ventilation and there is good circulation of the air so that the virus particles get diluted. Spacing desks and out, so you need to maintain at least 1 meter distance and have them face in the same direction. So you don't put them in a circle so that the direct contact is lost. Creating one-way traffic in school always. So you could have one way to enter and one way to go out. You could have staggered timings. So particular class leaves the school at a particular timing, and then again after 15 minutes you could have the other class going out. So you avoid a lot of crowd at that particular moment, and reduce the number of children on school buses. So this is how practically you can practice safe distancing in schools. So it is important to understand not one of these have to be practiced. You have to practice it all in combination. The third and most important thing is to wear a mask. So the guidelines mention that mask wearing is very effective in reducing the transmission of virus from infected individuals. It's really very effective. And these are the guidelines. I think all the guidelines mention the same sentence: universal indoor masking in schools for all students age 2 years and older. So any child above 2 years of age should wear a mask. Teachers, staff, and visitors to school, irrespective of vaccination status. So it's not like that I've taken the vaccine, I need not wear a mask. No, even if you've taken both the doses of vaccine, you need to wear a mask, because even if you've taken the vaccine, you can get infected and you can spread the infection to others. Vaccine protects against severe form of the disease and not infection per se. Universal masking also protects against other respiratory illnesses, which is quite common among children. So actually using a mask will protect them against colds and flus as well. So these are the recommendations. Now let's see how to put them into use. What can parents do? Parents can have multiple cloth face masks available for your child. So since school is starting, you have your stock of cloth face masks. Provide your child with a clean mask to wear and always have a backup mask in the bag. So if needed, the child will use it. Label your child's mask clearly. So it's very important to label it so that the child actually keeps on using his own mask. Practice properly putting on and taking off the cloth face mask. So you have to train your child not to touch the cloth part of the mask. Only the strings have to be touched and you should directly put it into the ear. So they do not keep on touching the mask again and again. Remind your child that they should clean their hands before and after touching their mask. So they need to either use a hand sanitizer or wash your hands when they do so. Teach them never to share masks with others. So this has to be clearly told. So children are very smart. If you give them proper instructions, they will really follow it. And it's important to tell them why it is important to wear a mask. So talk to your child about the importance and you act as a role model wearing them as a family. So whenever you step out, you put on a mask, the child sees the father or the mother doing the same and will follow the same. So this is how we need to reinforce to our kids that wearing mask is compulsory. This is the new normal and this is how they have to go to school. What can schools do is schools can ensure that all students, teachers and support staff consistently and correctly wear the mask, irrespective of the vaccination status. So there has to be no leniency. Everyone should be there with a mask. And those who have actually missed the mask, the school should have provision to provide masks who need them, including on the buses. So even during transport, even when you're going to the washroom, even when the child is going to have his meals, he will go with the mask. The fourth step is to keep hands clean. So this is again important. The recommendations from our guidelines mention that you need to practice hand washing and respiratory etiquette. Now this is all, I think everybody is aware of the same. Respiratory etiquette is where you need to cover your mouth, nose with a tissue when you cough or sneeze. So this has to be taught to the child. Throw used tissues in the trash. And if you don't have a tissue available or a kerchief available, you have to cough or sneeze into the elbow and not into the hands. So this has to be reinforced. I think schools as well as parents have to teach this to the children. And when you blow your nose or clean your nose, it's important to wash your hands after this. It is very important to practice these recommendations so that you prevent the transmission of the virus in the schools. Wash hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. Now, how do you count 20 seconds? You can ask the children to sing the happy birthday song twice. So that is 20 seconds. So as they start washing, they start singing the song and they finish washing and they have sung it twice. If soap and water is not available, a child should be taught to use a hand sanitizer. And this hand sanitizer, always check, should have 60% alcohol. This hand sanitizer should be used with adult supervision in children who are less than 6 years. So less than 6 years, don't hand them hand sanitizer. You can use it for older children. So these are the recommendations. So how do parents go about it? Parents need to practice hand washing at home with your child and explain its importance. So you need to tell them again and again that this is how the germs will go off when you wash your hands. So that is when the child will practice it. Teach your child how to use a hand sanitizer. So you should be very careful. They should not spray it into their eyes. So ideally it should be used only for children who are more than 6 years. Children less than 6 years need adult supervision. So teachers or parents can guide them. Explain that he or she should avoid touching his or her eyes, nose, mouth, and mask at all times. So hands should never go towards the face. Develop daily routines before and after schools that foster healthy habits. So you have to practice all this at home so that the child is able to continue it in school. Ensure that the child washes his or her hands and changes clothes as soon as he comes back from school. Schools can teach students to wash their hands with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. So this children learn best when they are taught in school. So if you keep on reinforcing the same, they will follow it. Remind students to wash hands frequently and help young children with hand washing. So you could have some hand wash break or something in between so that they all go and wash their hands. Provide hand sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol if hand washing is not possible every time. And you need to have these stations where you have hand washing or hand sanitizing facilities, especially at the entrances and exits. So, so that the child actually sterilizes his hand by the time when he enters into the school. So all this has to be kept in mind. So this is the fourth. So there are very simple steps. They look very simple, but they actually go a very long way in helping reducing transmission of the virus in schools. Cleaning and disinfection, it is actually lower down in the list, but it is important to clean and disinfect. Cleaning is washing with soap and water. Disinfecting is using a disinfectant, like you can use some hypochlorite solution or a Lysol or something like that. And frequently touched, so cleaning and disinfecting frequently touched surfaces like doorknobs, faucets, keyboards, tablets, phones can definitely help in reducing the risk of illness. So you need to clean and disinfect at least once a day. So the guidelines mention you should do it properly once a day, but you can do it more frequently if the need arises. Wherein you have an area where there is a lot of traffic, so people are coming and going again and again. So that table you can disinfect or clean, twice or thrice a day. Sometimes there could be have a COVID positive case in a particular classroom, and in that case, that classroom needs to be disinfected immediately. So that is as per the situation arises, but at least once a day it should be done. Schools therefore should have a schedule. They should have a checklist, daily cleaning and disinfection of all the school environment, including the washrooms. High touch surfaces like plastic or metal, grab bars, play structures, and railings should be cleaned regularly. So because that is where children are going to keep on touching. And it's important to train the cleaning staff and ensure that they're also safe. So everything has to be done in a proper systematic way. The sixth point is about ventilation. So ventilation, you need to improve ventilation and indoor air quality in the school. So the air quality has to get better. So basically you should have a good flow of air. This is because this will dilute the viral load by reducing the virus containing aerosol. So I told you all that respiratory particles are going to be suspended in the air and you have to have good flow of air to dilute the same. So best is to have clean and natural ventilation. So wherever possible inside the building, you need to open windows if it is safe. So ensure that the windows are safe and ensure that the windows are open. If you're using air conditioning or ventilation systems, you need to regularly inspect them, maintain and clean them. In addition, nowadays you have a lot of, you have these HEPA filters, which can be used for a particular room. These are mobile filters and they are also supposed to be very effective against, viral particles. So they're able to collect the particles well. Exhausts can be preferred in washrooms. So the basic idea is to ensure that there is good circulation of air. So this the school has to take care of it. The seventh point is to stay home if sick. So all the recommendations actually mention that any student, teacher or staff who has symptom of any infectious illness, so fever or anything, cold, cough, they should strictly stay at home and seek medical care before coming back to school. See, COVID is just like any other viral illness. It's very difficult to differentiate. Even as a doctor, I can't tell whether this fever is due to COVID or it is due to non-COVID illness. Testing is the only thing which helps us identify. So therefore, it is better to stay at home. So what can parents do? Monitor your child every day for signs of COVID-19. So what are the signs? It's temperature, fever, cold, cough, body pain, sore throat. Just keep a watch. If they have any signs of illness, they should stay at home from school and other activities. Though online classes can be continued if possible. If the child turns out to be COVID positive, it is the duty of the parent to report to the school. So this is an adjustment. So this is how if everybody behaves in a mature way, then the things become more smooth. So you need to report it to the school so that contact tracing can be done and the appropriate group or that bubble of students can be then quarantined. And if vice versa, if a child comes in contact with a COVID positive case, you should be ready to follow the quarantine and testing rules. So these rules actually vary from place to place. It depends upon the local community transmission. So it depends upon the community transmission at that particular time, at that particular point of time. It will vary from day to day. So you have to follow the rules which are set by that local place. So you need to be safe. How can schools enforce this? So schools should enforce the policy of staying home if unwell. So you should be flexible with leaves. So that helps actually, so that even if the child is not feeling well a bit, can stay back at home to be sure that everything is fine. Ensure that students who come in contact with a COVID positive case, either in school or outside, they stay at home for 14 days. So this is the quarantine period which was given initially. Now in some areas it is even 10 days. Depending upon your community transmission. See, if you look at the guidelines, they actually have a huge table. Like if the community transmission is very low, then you have a quarantine period which is low. and you can do a testing. And if the community transmission is high, you may have to do repeat testing and confirm and stay at home for 14 days. So it varies with the area per se, and you need to consider options for screening on arrival. And daily temperature reading as a part of screening, yeah, it has been proposed by some of these guidelines, and it says actually pick up fever. It may or may not be COVID, but at least you pick up a symptomatic child so that the child is immediately attended to, taken out separately, and sent home. So that is another way in which you can screen kids. And the last is about screen testing. Now, screen testing, again, it depends upon the community transmission. So it is not recommended if your community transmission or the cases in the community is very low. But if the cases are rising, then at the same time, when community transmission is rising, you may start getting 1 or 2 extra cases in school. So in that cases, it becomes very important to identify those people who are infected, but they're not having any symptoms. And but they're contagious, they will spread the infection. So you do a random check of a few group of students in the school, or you check the teachers every week. A separate group can be tested every week, and you pick up 1 or 2 cases which are positive. So this reflects the community transmission and not the transmission in the school. And these random surveillance tests will depend upon local guidelines based on community transmission. So this is one of the ways in which you can pick up cases early. These were the 8 important points which I actually enlisted out. And as I told you, this is a multiple preventive strategy, not one point. You can't say that I'm just wearing a mask and that is enough. It is not like that. You have to use a mask, you have to wash your hands, you have to maintain distancing, and this we have to get used to all this. In transport, I just wanted to put in a slide regarding transport to schools. So you need to follow all these even during transport. So promote respiratory and hand hygiene, physical distancing, masks in transportation such as school buses. Ensure that there's only 1 child per seat. This is the ideal recommendation. Ensure that there is a distance of at least 1 meter. If possible and safe, you can keep the windows also open. So these are the transport recommendations, and you need to follow the same. Now, what if a child is exposed to COVID-19 now? So you have to understand that whatever we are doing is going to decrease the risk of transmission. You cannot eliminate the risk. This disease is there in the community. It is there to stay. So we have to accept it. So it is possible that in spite of following all these religiously, you may have a case where the child gets exposed to COVID-19. So what is the best way to tackle it is to be prepared. So actually parents should develop a plan to protect the family and household members. So the best way to do it, as I told you, is to get vaccinated. So even if a child brings home an infection, the adult is vaccinated at present, and probably if children start getting vaccination, it's going to be really good. But as of now, the parents and the grandparents are protected. So that is the first way you protect your family. You ensure that your emergency contact information, your school pickup and drop-off information is the recent and accurate one present at school, so that they're able to contact you at any point of time. Communicate with your school to find out what is the local protocol for, how will they communicate, how will the school communicate when there's a positive case, how will they track contact tracing, how will they quarantine those kids, for how will they maintain education during the quarantine period. Maybe some online mode can be conducted during that time. So this, every school will have its own plan, and it has to be communicated with the families. And please plan ahead. There may be periods of quarantine, there may be periods of school closures, and this is what is happening everywhere where schools have started. You may have small closure for 2 weeks or so because there have been 2 or 3 cases detected, or a quarantine period for 10 days because somebody has come in contact. So this is going to be there, but the risk will be low if all the COVID appropriate behaviors are followed. But we need to be prepared. What can schools do? I just mentioned they can have a protocol for inadvertent exposure and how do they communicate with parents. And then the quarantine rules and your isolation rules will be as per local guidelines. Ideally, we do a COVID testing immediately after exposure and after 5 to 7 days of exposure, because I told you the incubation period is 6 days. So, around 6 days you start getting symptoms. So that can be checked at that point of time. And it's important to prevent stigma by using facts and reminding students to be considerate of one another. So getting a positive result is not supposed to be considered as a stigma. So children need to understand that it's just a disease and it becomes positive and becomes negative. So what happened in initial days, when anybody turned to it positive, everybody used to start neglecting the families and they were avoiding the families. So it's not like that. So we know more about the disease. We are more smarter now. So I think we should ensure that our children also understand the same. Now, I thought there were a few, I think a lot of kids are sitting for the presentation, so I just thought I'd summarize it for the kids. So for the students, please ask questions, educate yourself, get information from reliable sources. Don't listen to all the rumors and which is all going on around. So no, you need to get information from reliable sources. You can talk to your parents, your teachers, and get all the necessary information before you get into the school. Protect yourself and others. So it is your duty to protect yourself. Now this, you have to get adjusted. There is no way out. You need to wash your hands frequently, always with soap and water for at least 20 seconds. I told you to sing the happy birthday song twice. Remember to not touch your face, eyes, nose, mouth, and even your mask. So don't touch it. Every time your hand goes to your face, you should say, no, I'm not going to touch it. Do not share cups, your food, drinks with others. So preferably keep your food to yourself and eat and wash your hands. You can help others to be healthy. So please share what you learn, what I have told you today. Please share it amongst yourself. You will spread information about preventing disease. See, when community transmission reduces, automatically everything reduces. So everybody has to follow COVID appropriate behavior everywhere. Please model good practices like sneezing or coughing in your elbow. I think you should practice sneezing and coughing in the elbow at home so that you can follow it later on. And washing your hands. Don't stigmatize your peers or tease anyone about being sick. And please tell your parents or family member or caregiver whenever you feel sick, and you should stay at home. So this is instruction for the kids. The take-home message being appropriate use of multiple prevention strategies, which is multi-layered protection, can definitely keep children, teachers, and staff safe and keep schools open. So this is evidence-based statement. So I think you should believe it. Families, schools, and communities can work together, can help ensure students can remain safely in school where they actually need to be, right? So this is the place where they are supposed to be. And let's all adapt to the new normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shobhyanidhi. That was very informative. I had several questions, but you seem to have answered most of them. I think in the chat, we have one or two questions, and all of them are about the vaccine. So any information on when we will get the children's vaccine?
Ma'am, as of now, there is one vaccine which has received emergency approval for children above 12 years. But the stock has not come, and we usually get guidelines from our Indian Academy of Pediatrics. So we haven't received any guidelines as to give the vaccine to the children as of now. And there is another vaccine which has actually finished the trials and they have submitted the data to the government. So they are yet to come out with the results. So both are pending. But I just want to reinforce that vaccination is not mandatory before going to school for a child. Because see, basically, as I told earlier, vaccines are going to protect you against serious form of illness, severe infection, which doesn't happen in kids. Vaccine is not to protect against infection per se. Even if an adult has taken both doses of vaccine, we need to wear a mask to get ourselves protected. We can still get COVID. Only thing, it will not be very severe. So in children, vaccination is not mandatory before going to school. But then the vaccine is available. Definitely, it will be another point for us. In addition to these 8 points, we will add one more, that we need to vaccinate our kids.
And how many doses is the vaccine that has actually been approved so far?
Yes, ma'am. The one which is approved is 3 doses, ma'am. The 3 doses spaced by 28 days. And they are jet vaccines, so they are injection-free, painless vaccines. So they are trying to get in all those details. They are trying to fix up the cost. I think they fixed up the cost as well. And ma'am, but we haven't received any set of guidelines or rules from the government stating that we have to start. The stock is yet not come.
In the meantime, one more question in the chat. Any immune boosting foods that or anything that you recommend? Lots of people, give advice on a lot of, different things, but is vitamin C, vitamin D, what do you recommend for the children? Is there any recommendation or nothing, just healthy food? What?
As of now, like when any child who's COVID positive turns up, we definitely give immunity, give vitamins. We give vitamin C and D and zinc supplements to kids. Our guidelines say it doesn't, we don't know how it works, but it's not wrong. You can give. So basically, immune boosting food is, see, immunity is there inside your body. it is not, you're not going to get it from outside, but you need to take in a lot of fruits and vegetables. So these are the ones which give a lot of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, which help you fight infections in general. It's not for COVID per se, it is in general. You need to ensure that the child takes more healthy food. So rather than now, I think most of the kids are taking all junk food, so that has to be stopped and taking more of healthy food, and that itself has immune boosting food for kids.
Another common question you ask is, a lot of people say is, can children spend time with their grandparents now that they started going to school? I have very old grandparents. So, I get asked this question all the time. Would you like to answer that question, Doctor?
Yes, ma'am. So first and foremost, the grandparents have to get vaccinated. So that has to be done in the first phases. So, and a child who is having any symptoms should avoid coming in contact with the grandparents. Otherwise, there is no harm. I mean, you don't have restrictions per se. The thing is that those schools were closed. If you look at the seropositivity data, ma'am, in July 2021, we had the national survey data which came out. This was collected by ICMR, and we actually collected group of individuals in our country to detect the antibody levels. And you should be surprised that the antibody levels in children were almost same like that of adults. Adults had almost 68% seropositivity. It was either through infection or vaccination, and kids were almost 60% above 6 years. So even if they were at home, they were getting infected, they were getting exposed. So the school transmission is, not going to actually increase the level of exposure per se. With grandparents, if they're provided they're completely vaccinated and child is not having any symptoms, there should be no harm in coming in contact with them.
So I think we have Ms. Geeta, who's asking a question. How do you convince parents to send children back to school? They're not sending in a very, so I think Ms. Geeta, I'd answer that question by saying, I think we should send more such information guidelines to parents to kind of improve the awareness, because now everybody believes everything on WhatsApp, and, all you see is these. So the school should take the effort to actually constantly communicate to the parents, the benefits of the child coming to school. Also, what actually are statistics of children falling sick. So all of this, I think, combined together will give confidence to the parent and perhaps you can organize sessions where you can have, parents directly question the doctors, so that they're also feeling at ease to send their children to school. I think it's a step that all of us should work together to work on. And we definitely, from Health Basics as well as Sri Ramakrishna Hospital, do our very best to, get the message out that it is safe to come back to schools and what the precautions are to be taken. Thank you for that. So another question is, what test would you recommend, the RT-PCR or antigen or MyLab Covishield self?
Yeah, so RT-PCR was the initial test which was being done. And now the antigen or the MyLab Covishield is the same. So it is the antigen test. It's a rapid antigen test. So rapid antigen test is the test which can be performed at home. So that is an advantage. You need to, for RT-PCR, you need to go to a center and get it done. RT-PCR takes time. You need at least 6 hours, 4 to 6 hours to get the report. Rapid antigen test, you get the report immediately. So the point is, you can use rapid antigen test when you feel your child is sick and you want to confirm the same. If the test is positive, it is considered to be positive. And if the test is negative, you have to do a RT-PCR to confirm the same. So negative, rapid antigen test is not considered as negative. So that is the only difference between the two.
Sure. Thank you, doctor. And if you come in contact, say, today, suppose somebody tests positive and I've been in contact with them, how many days later do you suggest that I take the test? Because suddenly everybody is like, oh my God, today we met this person, yesterday we met, today they've tested positive. So should I do it today? Should I do it on 5th day? Should I do it on 3rd day?
Ma'am, actually, if you look at the CDC guidelines, they give a very proper chart in which you have to conduct testing. So when you come in contact, you do a test immediately, and then you repeat a test at 5 to 7 days.
So immediately, and then 5 to 7 days later, you test again. Okay. Thank you, doctor.
Yes.
And I think Lakshana has asked the question. Now school is going to start, and so if Corona is increased again, what will we do?
So if Corona increases, community transmission increases, it will get reflected in the school transmission. So actually, the local authorities have been instructed to keep a watch. So it is only for 15 days plan almost. In 15 days, you keep a watch on the community transmission. If you feel that it is increasing, it is possible that schools could go into closure mode again and then come back again after 2 weeks or so. So this is going to be there. We have to anticipate the same.
And what is your take on flu vaccine? Must children get it? Adults get it? What's your take on flu vaccines?
Flu vaccines, now according to IAP guidelines, flu vaccines are compulsory for children who are less than 5 years of age. So
Compulsory for children less than 5 years.
It's compulsory. It has to be taken annually. It should also be taken by adults who come in contact with patients like doctors, nurses. It should also be taken by adults who are having, other risk factors. So they are having a lung disease, asthma, or they are having a heart condition. So they can take it. This vaccine is taken annually once. This flu vaccine does not protect against COVID. It protects against the common seasonal flu, which is usually seen around this time. Even if an older child comes with a request to take a flu vaccine, we don't refuse the vaccine. So even if there's an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, we can offer. It is not compulsory, but it can be taken.
Sure. Another, I think it's Jyoti is asking, I think Srinidhi asked, when will we get the children's vaccine? Srinidhi, I think doctor already answered that. Still, we haven't gotten any guidelines from our Indian Academy of Pediatrics. So we are waiting for the government to release a date. Jyoti asks, if I wear a mask for all class periods, how will I get oxygen, ma'am?
So there are studies where, there are people who actually check your saturation levels with mask, without mask, with double mask, and there's not much of any difference unless you have any other problems related to using a mask. So if it's a healthy child and there is usually no difference in oxygen, you have to get used to it. Even as doctors, when we started using masks in the initial phases, it was really difficult. But now I can manage. I will only remove it for lunch and then I put it back. So I have removed it now because I'm talking, but otherwise, we get used to it. It doesn't affect your oxygen levels. Don't worry.
So Jyoti, I think you're in no fear of getting less oxygen. You'll be fine, I think so. And so another question is, are there any, accurate COVID information websites that are available that you would recommend? Because a lot of fake information, right? So
absolutely, that's what I put it in the first slide.
Yeah.
I think we should share it now. These are references from standard guidelines. So these are the CDC, and these are the ones who actually make up all those guidelines for everybody to follow. So I put up all this list in the beginning. I think we can share it so that they all get access to those documents.
Sure. Actually, from Jaipriya, we have a question. A lot of school students are coming with stuffy nose, headache, and they themselves give the answer of climate change. How to really tell the difference between that and take precautions?
Even as a doctor, I can't differentiate between COVID infections and seasonal cold cough infections. And we are really seeing, because of the rains, I think, and because of the climate change or schools, whatever, we're seeing a lot of cases with URI. It's very difficult to differentiate. As per our latest guidelines, we do a COVID test if the symptoms are persistent for more than 3 days.
So if it's more than 3 days, if you have, a fever with cough, cold, or something, then you suggest that we do a COVID test. Okay.
And in these 3 days, we ensure that the child is kept away from grandparents and others who are not vaccinated. So we can ask the parents to keep them separately because we don't know what it is. And at the end of 3 days, if there is cough or anything else, we just go ahead with the test. So it's clinical. We don't have rules per se.
So somebody's asked, Ms. Sivaranjani has asked, you have asked about COVID-19 and in newborn babies. How can you take measures that will save them from such disease? So.
Newborn babies usually acquire COVID either because the mother is positive or they have been taken care of by the caregivers who were positive at that point of time. So mothers, now they have approved vaccinations for mothers as well. So even during pregnancy and lactation, mothers are taking vaccines. Again, COVID appropriate behavior. So when you have a newborn at home, it is important that you don't hand over the newborn to a lot of people, decrease the entry of relatives into the house, proper hand wash and hand sterilization before touching the baby. So these are the normal things, COVID appropriate behaviors which have to be followed to keep the newborn safe.
So somebody has asked about dengue and children. So is there an increase in dengue these days? And how is that symptom different from COVID or flu?
So So yes, ma'am. We are actually seeing a lot of admissions for dengue. I think it's because of the rains and mosquitoes. So the differentiating feature is dengue comes with only fever. And mostly you don't have cold, cough, running nose, or stuffy nose. The child comes with fever, and fever, and when fever persists for more than 3 days, instead of doing a COVID test because there is no upper respiratory signs, we get the platelet count done and we pick up dengue case. So that is the differentiating feature. Otherwise, fever is common in all of them.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. So Lakshana has asked, if I vaccinate myself, will I not be affected by COVID-19?
You can still get affected if you do not wear a mask and you do not follow COVID appropriate behaviors. But even if you get affected, you will not suffer from severe forms of the disease. So that is the benefit of vaccination. It is not to prevent infection, but it is to protect you from severe forms of infection. So even if you have vaccinated, you have to use a mask and practice social distancing and hand sterilization. That is the underlying point.
I think Sagar has asked, when will the COVID cure? I think Sagar, that's still a long way away. I think we all have to just, protect ourselves, and it will become like, literally like a regular cold, cough, and fever. So I think for now, we just have to do all the guidelines, keep, following all safety measures, Sagar. I think that's all the questions, Dr. Shobhyanandi. So what mask do you recommend for children? Cloth, surgical, or N95?
Ma'am, when you look at the guidelines, N95 is supposed to give you a lot of protection against, it is supposed to be the best amount of combination of two masks are also allowed. So, but in a younger child, using one mask itself is going to be really difficult. The child will keep on handling it and fidgeting with it, which is going to actually, not serve its purpose. So N95 if possible, or if there's an older child, definitely you can use a surgical mask and a cloth over it. That is also supposed to be really good. Nothing else, at least a cloth mask. So this is the order in which it has to work.
Thank you, Doctor. Ananya has asked, Ananya, I think still we don't know when we will get the vaccine. We are waiting for the government to give orders to everybody, and only then we will be able to tell you when we can give vaccines for children, Ananya. Is it necessary to wear double mask for children?
No, none of the guidelines, younger children definitely not because it's quite difficult. But in an older child, you can. You see how is the surgical mask is going to be straight like this. So you have gaps over here, and a cloth mask on top of a surgical mask actually seals it very well. So this is what is recommended in the CDC guidelines. They have given a table. So you have N95, and then you have a cloth mask over a surgical mask, and the next one will be a cloth mask. The only thing is the seal has to be good. It has to cover the nose, it has to cover the mouth, and it should be well sealed around your cheeks. It should not touch the eyes, otherwise the child will keep on fidgeting with it. So appropriate size masks, which has to be used in a correct way. So you have to teach your child to cover your nose and mouth and not use it in different, many people, they actually bring out the nose and just cover the mouth. So that has not to be done. Double mask can be used in older children.
Sivaranjani wants to know if a newborn baby gets COVID, how will the treatment be?
Treatment is again similar to any other viral infection. So we usually observe because as per our the scenario which is there, children who are less than 1 year tend to have a bit of fever or cold cough for a bit prolonged duration. They can also get severe form of the disease rarely. So in that case, you need to keep them under strict monitoring. You treat them for the fever and for the cold as you treat for any other viral infection. And if the need arises, then maybe you need to do a few blood tests or get the X-ray done if needed. It's based on the symptoms. But the treatment is just symptomatic treatment.
Harshad has asked, are overweight kids more quickly affected by COVID?
No, overweight kids are not quickly affected by COVID. The infection rate is going to be the same if you don't follow COVID appropriate behaviors, but the severity can vary. So in adults, what has been seen that when an adult is overweight, is having underlying problems like any heart disease or lung disease, or if they have diabetes, they have severe form of the disease. That is extrapolated, and we have seen that if children have underlying diseases like some neurological condition, genetic condition, and if they have some underlying congenital heart disease, they tend to have a bit more severe infection with COVID as compared to a normal healthy child. So obesity comes in that list. I mean, it is not going to increase the risk of infection, but the infection can be a bit severe. So that is why you need to keep your bleed and check.
Sure. And I think also there's a big thank you from Jayanti, and she has a question about any specific natural household remedies to precaution yourself and family to keep them safe.
Those 8 points which I mentioned are the only ways in which you can keep yourself and your family safe. So you have to get vaccinated, wear a mask, practice social distancing, and sterilization. This is the only way in which we can be safe.
What is your take on COVID booster? Are mixing vaccines advisable?
Mixing vaccines as of now is not advisable as per our guidelines from the government. So you have to take the particular dose vaccine only. COVID boosters, they are actually looking up whether it is needed or not. As of now, not recommended. Because what is seen that even if your antibody levels are on the lower side, it is supposed to get picked up when you come in contact with an infection. So that is what they say. So that is why booster as of now is not recommended. Probably they first try to immunize everybody. They are still lacking. Second dose of many of the people are still pregnant. So let everybody finish. Yes.
So there's a question on, is there a chance of reinfection and recurrence of COVID in kids?
There are 1 or 2 case reports in adults wherein they have shown that a person actually is remaining positive for a very long time, or gets a repeat positive test after a few days. I'm not aware of any such data from kids per se, but adults, yes, there are a few cases who have got a repeat infection. So it is known. But this was all before the vaccines were started. So it was in the very initial stages. I need to really confirm.
Sure. Also, there is a question about, somebody's daughter, Miss Ananya's daughter is very thin and lean, so wants to know how to get her healthy. I think, Miss Ananya, you shouldn't talk about getting her fat. I think she should be healthy. So lean is a good thing, but I'll have doctor answer because she is the specialist in this subject. So.
So, ma'am, actually, you can't compare your child with others. You have growth charts. You need to plot your child's growth on the growth chart and then decide whether the child is lean or not. So, being lean doesn't mean that the child is not healthy. Or being fat doesn't mean that the child is healthy. You have to be within your centiles on the growth chart. And if the child is otherwise active and otherwise having no issues, I think you need not worry. Just give a regular healthy diet and that is
great. So Devavarshini is asking, is using sanitizer often in class? Children are using, and is it a good method of protection?
Sanitizer is to be used only when water and soap is not available. When hands are visibly dirty, there's no point in using sanitizer. You have to wash your hands. So, you could have set up the rules like before eating, after visiting the washroom, or you can use water and soap. Sanitizer can be used for small things like, suppose you're just putting on your mask, you can use a sanitizer and quickly then put on your mask. So small issues, you can use sanitizer.
I think Dakshit is asking about, the schools keeping them safe. Schools are doing their best possible to keep your children safe. So I really think, they're doing everything they can. I have been personally, in touch with most of the school authorities who are taking more care in school than they do in their own homes. So I think it's safe to say that the schools are doing their best and will do their best. So. I think that's about all the questions for today. And thank you so much, everyone, for attending this session. If there is anything else at all, please reach out to us at Health Basics, to our concierge service. We are happy to help you with any other questions. We will have Dr. Shobhyanandi respond to you. Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Doctor, for your inputs today. It was a very informative session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. And it was a nice opportunity. It was a nice chance getting in touch with so many of them. I think we need to spread this awareness. Everybody has a lot of questions related to COVID. And I think everybody should take the initiative and start sending children to school.
Sure. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.